There's an unfortunate trend in zombie games as of late. It's been going on for quite a long time, and many players at one point really pushed for it to change. What I'm referring to is the lack of new perks. World at War, Black Ops 1, and Black Ops 2 each introduced 4 new perks each game. But starting in Black Ops 3, the introduction of new perks slowed down dramatically, with BO3 only introducing 1 new perk across its entire life cycle, Widow's Wine. Many players were upset with each subsequent map release that the devs were taking what could have been new perk ideas and turning them into gobblegums, which could be exploited through microtransactions. BO4, hearing the criticism of BO3, would introduce 12 new perks across its life cycle, which was a welcome design philosophy in my opinion, being that the game had a different type of perk system and mechanics. Unfortunately, both Cold War and Modern Warfare Zombies dropped the ball when it comes to perk innovation, being that no new perks were introduced besides Elemental Pop, which many would argue isn't necessarily a new perk, being that it only activates already existing double pack abilities. Plus, the concept of this was already done in IW Zombies with Change Choose, but even those abilities were unique to the perk and not the Pack-a-Punch. Needless to say, we haven't been getting the steady volume of new perks, and the creativity seems to be lacking as of late. But there was a game where the new perks introduced weren't just made to be out there perks, done to answer for the lack of new ones in the previous game. Treyarch at one point had a vision, an idea that we can see develop through gameplay. One where the devs were trying to create a perk to fill a certain role, but after multiple failures, decided on a wholly original concept. This is the evolution of Black Ops 2's Afterlife perks. During the era of World at War and Black Ops 1, the game was much more difficult. One aspect that was especially punishing was when the player bled out. Respawning with nothing but your starting pistol, especially on a higher round, could be very tough to recover. And sometimes impossible if the player had spent all their points before they went down. While perks are designed to keep the player alive on higher rounds, what happens when you die and lose everything? I'm sure the devs at Treyarch during the development of BO2 thought this exact thing. And we can infer this by the introduction of the game's first new perk, Tombstone. Existing as a co-op exclusive perk on both Transit and Town, Tombstone Soda was a new kind of perk, as it had no function until you went down. Here is where you could choose to activate its effect, instantly bleeding out the player and leaving behind a unique Tombstone power-up drop. If and when your teammates ended the current round, the player could grab their Tombstone and regain all of their lost perks and weapons. The concept of the player not losing all their items from the previous life was a major innovation and a great concept. However, the execution was done rather poorly. Being that the perk only works in co-op, it completely relies on your teammates to allow you to take advantage of it. Plus, the power-up doesn't even last long enough for you to travel from one location to another to grab it. The perk works far better on Town, it being a small survival map with no real obstacles from you instantly re-grabbing your Tombstone. This idea would have functioned far better on smaller or even medium-sized maps from previous games, as the length of fog between locations is the size of an entire map in BO1. Tombstone was ruined simply by the map it was placed on. However, the next perk would fare a little better in its location and execution. With the first DLC map Die Rise would come with it another new perk, in a similar vein of Tombstone, this time being Who's Who. Who's Who is another perk that works with the idea of preventing the player from losing all their perks and weapons if they go down. This time, however, the player doesn't need to bleed out to get the intended effects. In fact, the bleed out mechanic is how the perk works. With Who's Who, when the player goes down, they appear as a ghost doppelganger, and they are tasked with reviving themselves before the first body fully bleeds out. If they are successful, they get back up with all their weapons and perks kept, apart from Who's Who. If the player is unable to revive themselves in time, their original body disappears and are now fully alive with just the pistol they spawned with. But this happens on the same round. This is where Who's Who's execution far surpasses Tombstone, as you aren't reliant on your teammates in a co-op game to get the effects of the perk, only yourself. This also means that the perk exists in solo as well, and can be used as an alternative to quick revive. However, if the player downs while in the ghost state in solo, the game ends. Unlike co-op, where while downing in Who's Who mode, your teammates can revive you. While Who's Who works much better than Tombstone, its concept is still very much flawed and not casual friendly. And it's casual or players who would need the perk that can't really take advantage of it because needing to revive yourself with no perks and a pistol on round 20 plus isn't the easiest thing to do. It's very clear from both of these perks what Treyarch was trying to do. Create some kind of after-death system that would keep players from losing everything and allow them to recover easier. It's just their implementation didn't work as well as they'd hoped. This had led to many players referring to Tombstone and Who's Who as some of the worst perks of all time. With 2 strikes, most devs would abandon the concept, but Treyarch had one more swing to try, and luckily, their final attempt at this system would nail them a home run that no one would suspect. A new, innovative, and creative system that wasn't even a perk at all. There's a lot of reasons why Mob of the Dead is regarded as one of the best maps. It's a whole host of elements. The presentation, the location, the way the gameplay evolves as you go through the map, and the major component that ties all of this together, Afterlife. The Afterlife system was the final evolution to this idea Treyarch was developing, for the player to make a recovery after going down. It's tied in perfectly with both the gameplay and the story of the map, being that you start off in Afterlife with a simple but genius tutorial on how it works. Afterlife completely replaces Quick Revive on this map. It is both a solo and co-op system that has multiple functions. It allows the player to unlock more of the map, as well as perks. It can help in reviving fellow teammates, as well as yourself. In solo, you get 3 Afterlife charges per round, and in co-op, you get 1. This system not only gives the player the ability in solo to recover themselves, but also in co-op as well. When you go down normally, you go into Afterlife mode. Only after your time in Ghost mode expires do you fully go down. We can see the concepts from both Tombstone and Who's Who here, but finally evolved into an integrated system that the player can use in more ways than one. Later games would have plenty of simple mechanics to recover from death, such as the lost and found from IW zombies, or keeping your weapons when you respawn like Black Ops 4. Nowadays, it's far easier to recover in-game, but it's so fascinating to see the birth of this idea and see almost in real time how the developers made this system work.